Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the latest edition of Woke Bros. Of course, I'm your co-host, Big Wos, aka Wosny Lambre, joined as always by my partner and brother, Nando Vila. What's going on with you, bro?
Doing well. Just welcoming the fall. Nice, cool weather.
Yeah,
Summer's over. White boy summer's over, dude. I don't know if you noticed.
Yes, it's a cool 99 degrees here in the valley today. Can't wait for the fall to come so I can start really dressing. My black
you gotta layer up.
Will know what the hell I'm talking about with that one. Okay, on today's show, we do want to talk about the sort of, as Nando described to me yesterday over text, he said they're kind of playing a game of chicken between the corporatist conservative Democrats and the progressive side of the party. This thing is getting down to the nitty gritty here when it comes to the infrastructure bill. So we'll give you guys the latest and greatest from that. But first, we would be remiss if we didn't come on today's show, Nando, me being a first-generation Haitian American, child of two Haitian immigrants, if we didn't talk about the asylum seekers down at the southern border, Haitian refugees who have basically tried to come to America via Mexico, seeking asylum, seeking shelter from the rain, from the poverty, from the violence, from the food insecurity, from the lack of governance, as Haiti doesn't have a government right now, from just a horrible earthquake, a natural disaster, rocked the countryside. Just a terrible list of circumstances in that country, which it's important to note, right? It's not just that it's horrible circumstances in the country. It's horrible circumstances that the United States government has a huge hand, plays a huge part in creating those circumstances. And so it's not even that, just morally, we should be welcoming refugees to the richest country ever in the history of humanity, the country with the most abundance, most wealth, most resources ever. It's that, we did this. It's only right that we let some of these people through in their desperation and give them an opportunity to come here and change their lives and that of their children. But instead, what we see is the horrific images of dudes on horseback with whips, Nando, whipping dudes in a river. It's the most craziest shit that we've probably seen since hosing black folks down in the streets in the 70s. It's just, it's awful. And again, Trump, say what you will about the party, about Republicans and how xenophobic, racist, horrible their stance on immigration has been for, over a decade now, basically since Bush. Bush was really pro-immigration. It's kind of crazy to think back now, but the neocons and all of them were nah, we kind of like immigrants. They're a nice little fresh crop of, low-wage workers, and they love being here. We fuck with immigrants. The Republicans have taken a sharp stance, and their stance is basically anti-immigrant. Keep them all out. We hate them. They're taking our jobs, blah, blah, blah. As horrible, disgusting as that stance is, Nando, I say it all the time, at least it's a coherent one. It appeals to people in this country. It's horrible. I don't agree with it, but there's a sort of unifying quality to it in the sense that a lot of people feel that way. What the hell is the Democrat stance on immigration? We don't know. We can't tell you. And it has no constituency. Everybody hates their stance on immigration. And so you get what you're getting at the border at the present moment.
Yeah, it's they're almost doing the worst possible thing in that they're doing some sort of cosmetic thing to say that they're very concerned about the situation of the thing, and but then they don't actually do anything about it, so they don't get any brownie points for doing fixing the problem, and they also don't get any brownie points for doing the xenophobia, right? Like you're right that the Republicans at least have an internal coherence to their immigration stance. It's like we just don't want them. I don't give a fuck who they are, whether be they Syrian refugees. Like there's the video. I remember Trump being like, "We don't want these jihadis, the Syrians, to come over here. Get over there. You better believe me, they're not coming over here." You know, like or Mexicans or whomever. And like you're right that there is a I think it's limited but passionate popular constituency to the anti-immigrant stance. Like you've met people. I mean, anyone in the audience has met someone who's like, yeah, you know, I don't want them. You know, like, I don't want some fucking dusty Afghan in my neighborhood. You know, after the war, whatever. We don't want those people. But the Democrats do the worst, and I think that it's exemplified by Kamala Harris's response to this crisis at the border, where we're seeing images, like you said, of dudes on horseback whipping black families in a river. I mean, with the United States' history, that's not an image that you want to do. And Kamala Harris's response, I think, is just peak Democrat. Sean, why don't you play Kamala's response?
Would want to give them if we met people like Jamie. So
Madam Vice President, do you have any reaction to the Border Patrol agents using horse reins to rein in Haitian migrants down at the southern border?
What I saw depicted about those individuals on horseback treating human beings the way they were is horrible. And I fully support what is happening right now, which is a thorough investigation into exactly what is going on there. But human beings should never be treated that way. And I'm deeply troubled about it. And I'll also be talking to Secretary of my office today about it.
And just as your role...
Yeah, I'm deeply troubled by it. Deeply troubled by it. We're gonna launch an investigation into the thing. You know, it's
Nando, that trouble is deep within me. It's so deep.
It's deep. And it's like, first of all, like, what investigation do we need? We saw the video. There's just like it. Yeah, we saw the fucking video, and you're the president, like, or you're the vice president, but like you work in the White House. You guys have broad authority to enforce immigration policy. That's so easy. It's so easy. They don't need Congress. They don't need to do anything. They don't need to, convince Joe Manchin or Kristen Sinema about it. They don't need any of that shit. They can do whatever they want, basically, when it comes to border enforcement. But they're probably gonna start some sort of task force committee, whatever, to look into it. It's gonna take a year.
They love a fake investigation.
Yeah.
They love like, oh, we're gonna put our best minds on it and they're gonna study it. It's just like everybody at the crib is watching this on their TV and just being like, this is trash. This is crazy. There's got to be a better way to do this. There's got to be a better way to gather these people, figure out if they have any relatives in here, figure out where we're going to house them, figure out whether we want them to stay or not, whether they have a case to stay, whether it's going to be too much. Like, there's got to be a better way. And guess what, Nando? We had a better way before Trump. We had a process for processing asylum seekers, refugees, migrants, whatever you may call them, in place. Trump completely dismantled it, but we had one in place. And what Biden is doing is in continuity with the Trump, not pre-Trump. He's in continuity with post-Trump policy when it comes to asylum seekers at the border. And, I talked about this on Woznia, the Twitch feed yesterday for TYT, where I was like, I actually know somebody personally who did this. Left Haiti, went to Mexico, stayed in Mexico City for like a few months, then went to the border, got caught on purpose. And he was like, yeah, they like detained you, but he was like, you weren't in like some prison, or you didn't feel like you had guards and they would watch you. Like, they kept you in some place. They wait, like, you provided them with the phone numbers, the addresses, and all of these people they had to contact. And those people sent W-2s and pay stubs and said, no, I'm going to support this homie when he comes to America. They let him through. It took a few years for him to get his green card situation situated. He had like a temporary sort of stay in America. He could work or whatever, but it wasn't a green card. It wasn't a permanent residency yet. And then ultimately he got his joint through after he went through the entire process. Like, we have this. We had this. It exists. And it was completely fine. But Trump, Biden and them obviously don't want to go back that route. And I think a part of it is the wrong-headed politics of, well, if we do this, one, sure, it might be the right thing to do, but it also has the carryover effect of an admittance of some vast fuck-ups in Haiti. Some like to acknowledge that these people obviously have a case for leaving that country because of the destruction that has been wrought by, one, United States foreign policy, and two, let's not forget, I hate not mentioning this, the Haitian ruling elite. Like, it's hand in hand. They work together to ensure these outcomes. Like, they work side by side together. I think that's what you're seeing here. They don't want to have to admit that, and so they're being idiots about it.
Wos, I think if we told people in the audience that the United States Marines occupied Haiti for 20 years in the 20th century, they'd be like, "What are you talking about? That's a lie."
Right.
Just Google it. It's on Wikipedia and everywhere. The United States occupied Haiti from 1915 to 1934. Like, straight up, like, military occupation. Woodrow Wilson basically enforced a constitution on Haiti that allowed American businesses and investors to own property in Haiti, which the Haitian people wanted to avoid, right? They want to avoid someone else owning their entire country. And the United States forced them to at the barrel of a gun. I think, not to mention the history of Haiti having to pay reparations payments to France, and then United States banking interests for freeing themselves in the Haitian Revolution with Toussaint Louverture. They paid for 140 years. From 1804 to 1947. I think people would be surprised to hear that. And then, like, it's not ancient history. I mean, like, the Clinton administration meddled in Haiti constantly. The Bush administration essentially kidnapped a Haitian president and dumped him off in Africa in 2004. They just, like, literally kidnapped him in the middle of the night and then dumped him off in the Central African Republic. And there's like, later, dude, you're out of here. And like, there's this remarkable moment of, like, he actually called Maxine Waters, who was a congresswoman at the time and is still a congressman, was like, "Yo, there's Marines fucking kidnapping me." And at the time it was reported, oh, it was a coup, it was an internal thing. All this shit. And so, like, the United States is, like, it's got its fingerprints all over Haiti, not to mention, like, all manner of economic policies that have devastated the country and things like that. And then now they're coming over after a massive political crisis and humanitarian crisis in the wake of their fucking president getting murdered by commandos hired by an American firm.
That's what I was about to say.
Yeah. And then an earthquake that killed like 2,500 people. That we know of. I mean, who knows what the real number is? A massive earthquake that just destroyed the country. So, like, I mean, this policy is so vicious. And I want to ask all the good liberals who were like, put up their little lawn signs that said, like, Black Lives Matter and immigrants welcome here. Like, what do they think about their guys now? What do they think about Kamala and Joe now? Like, what do they say about these things? They might say, like, "Oh, it's awful" or whatever, but like, they're not gonna do, like, they don't give a shit. They're not gonna do anything about it.
No. And because nobody really cares about immigration policy, except it feels like oftentimes the people who really, really do, right? That often just seems like it's the case. And I think what people need to understand too is, whenever you see images of Haiti or Haitian people, it is people whose lives have been devastated by a natural disaster or, just the poverty and all of that. Like, that's people's idea of what the entirety of Haiti and Haitian people are. And so, of course they're going to be like, well, do we really need these people coming in? Like, it's kind of easy for people to take that stance. But again, it's important to note, Haitian policy has been set by the American government forever now. Every single person who's been put in charge over there has been a pro-American government person for decades now. You can go from Michel Martelly to, Aristide in his second term. The first term was definitely some grassroots leftist revolutionary shit. The second one, when he got brought back, it was basically like, yo, I'm down with
they forced him to.
Right.
That was the deal he cut. They were like, Clinton was like, you either implement all these policies or you're not coming back. You know, like and then the United States did like a reverse coup and like brought him back in the early 90s. But the Clinton administration basically told him that, and they said that you couldn't run that he couldn't run for re-election. You know,
right?
So.
And just so you just go down the line, everybody who's been in power over there was a sock puppet of the American government. And so every single policy, every single major decision that gets done over there is with the blessing and the tacit approval of America. And so when you see the outcomes, when you see the horrible conditions of the poorest people in that country, just understand who's at fault, who's responsible, and when these people, and that's what makes it doubly just abhorrent and disgusting. And again, it's like we can make the moral case, which absolutely there's the moral case to be made on behalf of the migrants, asylum seekers, refugees, whatever the hell we want to call them. But there's also just the empirical data about immigrants, what happens when they come to this country. Yeah. They're our best people.
Yeah, like, everyone knows that.
It doesn't even matter where we get them from. Like, and you know, a lot of times, a large chunk of the immigrants we're self-selecting are higher educated, et cetera, et cetera. But it doesn't even have to be that. We bring people in here from other countries. They fucking love it here. They work their ass off. They teach their kids to love it here. It's like, it's just the data is on our side and not just morality, right? Like, so we got it on our side twofold, and yet you can't see your savior libs come in and make a coherent case, not just the moral, but the empirical. Like, they can't do either one, and you wonder why.
Yeah. No, and Haiti's always like the country that you look at and you see, like, if you're like a small, poor country in the developing world, especially in the Western Hemisphere, you essentially have two choices, which are both not great. One of which is to just accept total domination by the United States, you know, absolute total hegemonic domination by the United States, in which they essentially control your economy, and any attempt that you make to redistribute your economy to the poorest people instead of like U.S. investors and the ruling elite within your own country will trigger a U.S. essentially military response, if not like covert CIA action or whatever. Or your other option is to buck the United States, in which case then you become an official enemy. And this is like the case of Cuba, for example. And then you have to spend your every single waking hour fighting the sort of attack coming from the United States, which causes you to, you know, distract resources from, you know, the internal development that you do want to do. But at the end of the day, that choice, which is kind of just a horrible choice, because either you declare war or you allow total domination, is just going to be bad. Yeah.
By the way, and I'm glad you bring up the Cuba example, because, you know, when they talk about when the Cubans in Miami say, oh, he's Hitler and the death squads and blah, 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 blah. The United States, I think what's documented is over 200 attempts on the guy's life. Like, what do you think breeds that fucking atmosphere? Like, what do you think is going to happen when the greatest power in the world has like, what's documented is 200 attempts on your life? What do you think they're going to do with people that are dissidents when they see enemies at every single corner, when it's been known that the United States is trying to kill your ass? Like, that posture
might make you a little paranoid.
Come on. When the United States adopts that type of posture, like, that has terrible effects downstream to the people as well. Because again, like, when the people with the power in that country are just like, all right, it's not just some crank, you know, in a coffee shop somewhere riling people up and ginning up, you know, animosity and anti-regime sentiments amongst the people. It's the fucking United States government. I mean, hello. That's gonna breed a ridiculous paranoid, you know, sort of reactionary response from the people who rule the place. And so no matter what, whenever the United States is getting involved in a country, it's making it worse.
Yeah.
Every single fucking time.
I mean, and it's not a surprise that Haiti's the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere as a result. But there's a stat that was published today in Al Jazeera that I think is kind of just absolutely crazy. And it talks about the amount of people that are essentially the number of asylum seekers that are deported in the United States. Okay, so these are asylum seekers, which in theory, under international law, are meant to have like a fair trial to determine whether their asylum has merit or not. The United States has an exception for that called Title 42. It doesn't really matter, but it's a health exception, right? And the Trump administration started using that one because of COVID, and the Trump administration deported 440,000 people using that Title 42 exception. The Biden administration has deported 690,000 asylum seekers under the Title 42 exception, which, according to CNBC, health experts say has no health basis. I mean, COVID's in the United States. It's fucking in the United States.
Also, we got a vaccine. Vaccinate them.
Yeah, just vaccinate them. Just hand them a free vaccine.
Give them the free vaccine. What the fuck?
We have plenty. We have unused vaccines in America that are going rotten.
Vaccinate their asses. It's very simple.
So it's just. I mean, again, it's hard not to see this as just absolutely violent, casual cruelty and violence that is fully bipartisan. The Obama deported fucking millions of people. Trump did the kids in cages things, and now Biden's like upping the ante with the dudes on horseback with the
KKK
whip.
Sheriffs cracking the damn whip in a river. That shit was just obscene, bro.
Yeah. So.
And the guys yelling at the one freaking migrant, like, "Oh, this is what you do to your women. That's why your country's a shithole." It's like, really, bro, really?
Yeah.
And again, obviously Fox News and Tucker Carlson, of course, they're gonna run with. This is we can't let them in. They're changing the country 100,000 Haitians at a time. Of course they're gonna run with that, right? Like that's what they do. That's their job. Allegedly, this blue no matter hue, these more humane politicians, allegedly, is why we're supposed to get all hyped up into a frenzy when the Republicans are coming, because the Dems are gonna come in and just be so much fucking better, right? They can't even do that. They can't, like Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, they can't even come out and make a coherent defense as to why we need to be protecting asylum seekers. And you can't tell me that there's some Democratic base voter who would just be like, "Oh my God, no Afghans in here." I don't believe that. I just think it's bullshit.
Yeah, no, it is. And it's just incredibly, it's just incredible. I mean, it's, again, yeah, you're right. Like the vote blue, no matter who. Like, this is those moments where you're like, why do we fucking,
why do we bother? Why do we bother? Yeah. And so, that brings us to our next subject for the day, Nando. This reconciliation thing has been a slog, which we knew it would. Anytime you only have a 50 vote margin, which means you basically need every single cock-sucking Democrat in the party to agree to this thing, there's going to be people who start doing their attention whoring, right? And let's face it, the leadership at the top of the Democratic Party, they not cracking whips. They not them horseback homies. Schumer is not on a horseback when it comes to Joe Manchin. Hell, Joe Biden, with the bully pulpit of the presidency, is not on horseback. Like, I'm sorry, Donald Trump would have been calling these fools out by name every single press conference. Like, can you believe these fools don't want our agenda to get through? You know what we could be doing for people in West Virginia and Arizona and blah, 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 blah. Like, it's crazy, but whatever. They're not using it, and so we're at an impasse. And then you see stuff like the what's the person's name in the reconciliation process? The sheriff? What are we calling him?
The Senate parliamentarian.
The parliamentarian, the Senate sheriff. The Senate parliamentarian is saying that they're not going to let this reconciliation package go through with the path to citizenship, as Nando so beautifully reminded me before the show. They also blocked the fight for the $15 minimum wage in the last reconciliation package. And of course, the Dems is just like, I don't know, there's nothing we can do. This powerless parliamentarian is just blocking us. Oh, what do we do? It's crazy. So, right now, Joe Manchin is saying, "Oh, I only want my 1.5, privatization of infrastructure bill, 1.5 trillion privatization bill to pass. Cinema's just talking out her ass as usual. She doesn't even like. At least Manchin tries to do the inflation, bipartisanship. He actually tries to shine up his shit sandwich with some accoutrements. Kristen Sinema just does nothing. She is the definition of an empty suit. Who's wholly bought and paid for. Like she doesn't even try to present some ideas or a methodology when it comes to her blocking every single Democratic agenda item. And so, we're now at a place where the progressive wing of the caucus is basically saying, look, we're not going to vote. We're blocking that bullshit 1.5 trillion joint. And we're going to dare Kristen Sinema and Joe Manchin to stand in front of Joe Biden, the newly elected American president's whole agenda. Let them put their names on standing in front of the $3.5 trillion package that Biden is pushing. This isn't the Bernie package. This isn't the progressive package. This is the Biden package. Let them stand in front of that and see what happens.
Yeah, we're recording this on Wednesday, September 22nd. It's going to be released on Thursday, September 23rd. The deadline is supposed to be the September 27th. All right, so there's like 4 days left to go. And it really is like a game of chicken between basically Manchin and Sinema, because it doesn't look like the conservatives in the House have enough juice to stop it, but the conservatives in the Senate do have enough juice to stop it. But the House Democrats, especially under Pelosi, are looking to derail the whole thing if they don't get what they want, which is what they need to do, to be honest. They can't be held hostage by these people.
Fuck it.
Yeah,
fuck them.
And it really is like who's gonna blink first? Like, are Manchin and Sinema gonna blink first and derail the entire Joe Biden presidency, which is what this would do? It would like absolutely throw the whole Biden administration and Biden agenda into a tailspin if neither of these things go through. And the House progressives are gonna see if they can withstand the pressure to not pass this $1.5 trillion infrastructure bill. So it's going to be pretty crazy. I mean, I honestly don't know what to think. I don't think anyone knows. I mean, some people are quite optimistic that this thing's going to pass, that eventually Sinema and Manchin are going to accept some sort of like modified reconciliation bill that's close to what is put now. But that's going to be the issue. But then in the meantime, you see these things like the Senate parliamentarian, you see these Democrats who, immigration reform is like, just couldn't be a more standard issue on their plank. Like, they talk about it all the fucking time. And then the parliamentarians like, no, you can't do it in the reconciliation. And they're like, oh, we can't do it. We can't do it. The parliamentarian, a position that no one's ever heard of since before like this year. It's a position that like other people just fucking ignore constantly, and all of a sudden this is like this new thing that we got to worry about. Like, that they're just like,
Nando, every time with the Dems. First of all, until Obama, it never took 60 votes to pass nothing.
Yeah.
That was just straight up an invented idea. Just like, oh, nah, we're gonna do this other thing then. Now everything takes 60 votes. Until Joe Biden just got elected, this parliamentarian shit, it never existed.
No,
it never existed. But now all of a sudden, it's this huge impediment to the Democrats actually doing something.
Yeah. No, and they're like the only ones who play by that rule. Like the Republicans would never let the parliamentarian derail an important part of something they wanted. Like, if the parliamentarian was like, no, you can't do these tax cuts, they'll be like, yeah, go fuck yourself. Like, I don't give a shit who you are. They can either fire him, because it's a non-elected position. It's a non-binding position. Like, nothing that they say is law. Like, there is no law that says that the parliamentarian has some sort of veto power over the entire Senate. Like, the Senate can do the procedural things within the Senate that it fucking wants. But the Democrats are like the only ones who are like, oh, maybe the teacher's going to get mad at us if we ignore the parliamentarian. And it's just bullshit.
Yeah, and so this fight just continues to roll on. Maybe there will be some slight concessions to Sinema and Manchin, and they'll get to claim their scalps and go back to their corporate daddies and mommies, and they'll get their lollipop afterwards after a couple of concessions. But man, and again, like, there's something to like making those fools put their names on it, right? There's something to like, all right, we're gonna put this up to a vote, and you guys are gonna be the one. Because look at what happened to Joe Lieberman after what he did to Barry. Like, he was done. He was a pariah afterwards. He was finished. Like, Barry was an extremely popular president, and he was seen to be blocking this guy's agenda single-handedly with this new 60 vote rule, right? Then, of course, Scott Brown gets elected somehow, and the whole thing turns to shit. But I'm just like, look, guys, put the pressure on them. Nobody who supports these progressives in the House is going to think that, they're the ones that stop Joe Biden. We know who's doing it. We know who's doing this fake ass dog and pony show. Anytime the Democrats want to do anything for normal people, anytime, right? Just now I seen on Twitter, something just sailed through the House and the Senate, the Cuban shit, the Cuban sickness,
the Havana syndrome, syndrome. Oh my God, I did my whole segment on Jacobin last week on the Havana syndrome. If people want to check it out, it is the funniest fucking bullshit that's ever existed. It's very clearly like it's either fake or it's just a pure kind of like what they call a social disease, in which like sometimes it happens where like people within the same kind of group of social group or whatever have this kind of like mass psycho disease, and it's just purely invented. But this idea that the fucking Cubans have some sort of cosmic microwave ray gun that they're laser targeting CIA agents in, is just absolute nonsense. That anyone believes this shit is ridiculous. Like the fact that there's like this technology that the United States government would A, not know about, or B, not have, like that the U.S. military machine, that there's like some fucking, that the Cubans have some sort of more technologically advanced weaponry than the United States have. Like, come on, shut the fuck up. But they're running with this shit, man. They're running with it. They're convinced that the Russians and the Cubans and whatever have these like microwave ray guns that are frying these people's brains, when it's clear that they're just like getting dehydrated, or they're just like feeling guilty about all the awful fucking crimes they're doing on behalf of the U.S. empire. I mean, it's the funniest thing. But yeah, the bill to provide aid to them and like to those people like sailed through the fucking House and Senate.
Sailed through
the fucking Havana syndrome, dude. It's the fucking biggest bullshit. Like anyone who believes that story, like if you see anyone in the media who believes that story, like immediately write them off as just like an absolute patsy.
Yeah, they just they're basically on CIA payroll at that point. If
or just dumb as fuck. One of the two. So which means you can dismiss them offhand, you know what I'm saying, and not even think about it. But yeah, just think about that. The complete and utter crock that's been debunked by all kinds of scientific groups and all of that sails through the House. Joe Biden's going to sign it, no problem. Boom. Legislation that's going to affect the lives positively of millions of people, tens of millions of people, lift so many people out of poverty with the child income tax credit, like it's gonna like child tax credit, excuse me, like all kinds of crazy dope shit for working Americans, for the people who need it the most, the people who need government aid the most, right? Yeah, sorry, they don't got fancy ass degrees and doctorates and all of that shit, and they're not comfy in your suburbs and all of that. People who are working their asses off to pay their bills, feed their children, clothe them, house them, they're going to be helped the most by this new jobs, good jobs, union jobs for people with some of this infrastructure stuff, all of this shit, universal pre-K, all of this stuff that people are going to need so desperately. That's what's in this. And we can't get Joe Manchin, Kristen Sinema. Joe Biden can't be bothered, him and his freaking vice president, to fight tooth and nail for it. But we watch the Cuban syndrome just go easy peasy, just straight through. And again, Manchin and them will try to make
this fucking, mention at least anyway, will try to make the argument about inflation and what are we doing to the debt, and our children are gonna inherit the debt, and even McConnell and them are just don't even bother with the debt shit as much as they used to. Like, I remember Obama was like, every day when you turned on the news, it was the debt. It was the deficit.
They had like those running clocks.
Oh
like
my God.
Just like the number, growing every second.
Absurd, right? Like, even McConnell and them were done with the farce of it all. There's no reason not to do this. Again, we mentioned it a trillion times here on Woke Bros. The Fed, which again, it's its own entity, but just know when we need money for the shit that we want, we can just go out and do it. The Fed went out and they bought all of these bonds that are tied up into the US's debt, right? A lot of people buy up US debt, not people, excuse me. These financial institutions, they buy up US debt because it's like, of course America's going to pay me back this shit. I'm not like, this whole thing is America, right? Like, the entire financial system is America. This shit is as good as gold. It's as good as cash. All of these institutions buy up all of this debt. And what the Fed saw was like, yo, the richest institutions, like with this, this sort of uncertainty in the market, like they're not even buying this shit up no more. They came in and they said, yo, look, we're guaranteeing trillions of dollars in these bonds. We'll personally guarantee it. You're good for it. So keep doing your bullshit cowboy shit that you do in Wall Street. Just because we want you to do that shit so badly, we are personally guaranteeing that you can cash those fucking bonds if or when you want to, as the Fed.
Yeah.
There was no fight. There was no debate. There was no argument. There was no nothing. With the wave of a pen, this shit happened. There was no Joe Manchin standing in front of it. But what about the children? Yes, yada, yada. There was nothing. Nothing happened. They just fucking did it. On behalf of whom? The oligarchy, our overlords. That's what they just did it. No questions asked. They just guaranteed that bond market. Said this shit can't fail. But American families, who's to say, Nando? Can they? I don't know.
Yeah.
Who's to say? So just keep that.
No, they have to tighten their belts, dude. They have to tighten their belts.
Right.
Gotta tighten them up.
The least. Gotta be the most frugal. It's incredible, man. This austerity shit. But again, I like Nando said, there seems to be the smart people seem to be pretty optimistic about it. Not even talking about your typical DC shills, horse racy type of motherfuckers. Like, people who have a better understanding of this, who are on the ground over there, seem to think that some type of resolution is gonna happen because Biden has basically staked his first term on this shit. The midterms are coming up right around the corner, and it looks like the Democrats are gonna get their fucking clocks cleaned. So don't even think anything is passing through either house, either branch of government after that happens. And so, it's hard for people to think that they're just gonna completely sink this guy's presidency in one fell swoop just to be dicks about it. But we'll see. You can never don't ever discount the Democrats' ability to fuck up an easy hand. Like, don't ever put that out of the realm of possibility.
Yeah. Well, September 27th, mark your calendars, folks. That's the date that they've self-imposed as the day they got to resolve all this shit. I mean, they might extend it. Who knows? Because it's not like a law or anything. There's no actual deadline. This is like a self-imposed deadline. But, mark your calendars for September 27th. The country might change dramatically, or the shitty, because this bill, again, we've talked about it before. It's not like what we would want in the absolute, but it would maybe mark a turning point in a sort of downward slide of American politics that's been going on for 40 years, essentially. Like, this bill might be the sort of bottom, and then the slight uptick and change in direction. It would genuinely help millions of people, and would reshape significant parts of day-to-day American life in a way that just hasn't happened with American politics in 40 years. So, we might see a dramatic change, or just more of the same bullshit. Havana syndrome.
All right. With that said, buenos dias, y'all. Thank you for listening to today's show. Of course, make sure you become a Patreon at patreon.com/countthedings. Support what we do here at the pod. Make sure you're listening to Cinephobe, which, you know, they've been killing it recently with the movies. Nando was once a guest because he's a freaking.
It was fun.
He's a cinephile himself, movie critic, just film buff, all of that. Make sure you guys go check that out. The Friday mailbag, pack your knives, all of that good stuff. We'll see you guys next week. We're out of here. Peace.
Later.